All right, we're going to start a little broadcast here, talk about what's necessary to set up a Centos 7 minimal OS installation on a new piece of hardware, and then to set up Nginx, install Java, and create a user, but also then make it so that there's no root SSH access and no password access. So set up some simple functions here. Again, this is a Centos 7 minimal install, so it doesn't have a lot of information that goes with it. A lot of pre-installed, you have to install things yourself. So we'll over here and let's see, bring up a shell. Kind of go from there. Okay. Yeah, I should be presenting to everyone on that. Let's see if we can make this. Okay, so let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. We'll try to. There's a text size here for this specific. May make the text bigger. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to go. All right, that seems to be working. Let's see. All right, good. So increase the text size here. Right. So the first thing we'll do, of course, is remove any of the existing SSH keys on this system for this specific local LAN address, because I go ahead and shut the machine down, completely reinstall the minimal Centos 7 OS every time. So we'll be having new keys and everything installed, everything spun up again. In the beginning, it's kind of a DevOps type of approach where you script things so that we can automatically rebuild systems with scripts. And what I'm doing here is working on okay, 19. Oh, right. So we have those couple numbers switched here. So it's 192.168. Let's try that. Okay. There we go. Now we move that to the known host old. So now we can actually start to copy the SSH keys now over. And when I set up the minimal install of Centos 7, I bring over, I just set up 2 users, root and then a JJS or SBW, and give them passwords. And we will, before this process is done, we will eliminate the ability to log in with a password. You'll need a key, so the passwords aren't really that strong in this initial process. So that's because they won't be usable once we're done. They'll have to use SSH keys. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is copy the SSH keys over. I'll copy those, of course, out of the SSH directory, ID, RSA, a public key. Here is one of the established users on the new OS. All right, so we've copied it across, and it says let's check and make sure. Of course, we need to do the password. All right, so the keys have been added, one key. Now we'll check and make sure it works. All right, so now we have login without a password using SSH keys. That's good. And now we'll go through and do the same thing for root on this particular remote server. And again, we'll check and make sure that it works. As I said before, when you're done with this process, we'll disable the ability to log in with keys. All right, so we are now here. We'll see how many users we have here. One user will have root also, so that's fine. I'll exit out of here. Okay. Now we want to go to the development directory, and we'll move to the Centos 7 directory here. What I have is I'm working through the Centos 7 installation roles and the code to build up an Nginx server, and then to build up a Elk stack that has Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. I will add other things like Node and the ability to handle other programs and do testing as I go along, but I did a minimal install. And now I'm creating the scripts to just build this up and tear it down and build it up and tear it down. So I'm going to start with the Nginx install. I'm going to start with Ansible. That's an Ansible playbook. And one of the things I found that was interesting difference between Centos 7 Ansible playbook install and the Ubuntu Ansible install was I had to put the Python password encryption on my controller machine so that the Ansible playbook would then encrypt all the information that's going back and forth between passwords between my controller machine, my laptop, and the server. So that was a little different on Centos 7. It probably makes it more secure, the traffic on the network, which is interesting. So right now we'll just go through and install the Nginx Ansible playbook. Let's see how this works. There we go. So yeah, gathering facts. Okay, I'm putting in the repository. So it's setting things up. It'll take a while to download, set up, but not too long. But this is a process of going through and instead of using pre-designed or pre-built Ansible playbooks from Ansible Galaxy, I'm actually creating the steps or what we call the roles for each little one and making sure I understand how each part of that works for Centos 7, and then writing that, and I'll do those in a sequence. And once I'm comfortable with that, then I'll change them into roles and then just use a playbook to initiate all the roles. But It's quite interesting to do this. And the idea, of course, is to create a script where it's repeatable and that you can spin up a server quickly, automatically, if there's any issues. And that way, when there becomes an issue, you're able to handle it. And the prevailing wisdom seems to be that you should actually tear your systems down and build them back up at least a couple times a day just to demonstrate that you can do it. And of course, what happens there is then your persistent data needs to be somewhere in a storage type of network situation where the operations and on the data and the dynamic transforms of your data are going to be done by the servers that are basically ephemeral, where you spin them up, tear them down, basically at will, and they do the same thing because they're scripted. But your databases and your data stores and so forth, they really need to worry about state there. So you have to make sure that you have those replicated. We need to make sure that you have a way to handle that as it's going forward. So that'll be an architectural thing that we'll talk about as we go forward. But right now we're just doing the Nginx install. And we've just got the repository for the RPM or the Centos 7 install here. And now it's using that to install Nginx. And again, this is an Ansible playbook, so it's fairly straightforward. It just has uses SSH, doesn't require any daemons or anything on the target server. It's just commands from the controller. In this case, I'm using a laptop for the controller and just a piece of hardware, little server for the target. So it's moving right along. This gets done, we'll be able to check the Nginx, see if it's working, check the web page, and then after that we'll install. Let's see, so we got Nginx, then we'll install Java, and then after that we'll do the create users, which will lock everything down. We'll lock things down a little better, a little tighter anyway, and then move along. So it's taking some time to do this, but it's a good way to go. We can take a look at the script here while we're waiting. So this is the install YAML, yeah. So we'll stop and looking at that for a while. We'll look at the editor over here that has the this is the Nginx install script that's running right now. And the hosts all, that's basically just have one IP address in the local LAN for the server that's being built using the script. And then, of course, remote users root. And then we have the task names. We're going through and adding the EPL release repository. And Ansible being declarative type of language, it just says, tell Ansible what you want to have happen, and then it does that. It says, okay, I want to have this release present, so it does whatever the process is necessary to do that. It says install Nginx. It goes through and does that. Then of course, you have to configure the firewall. Now, this is something else that was really interesting, different than Ubuntu, that the firewall in Centos 7 is totally locked down. So you have to open up each piece to go through and make sure that you use a command to precisely configure the firewall. If you don't do that, well, you won't be able to access the server on the new, the service on the new server. And then, of course, then we start Nginx, and then it should be started. So let's take a look over here and go back and look at the, go back now and I'll look at the script that's done. Present that to everyone. There we go. So basically, it went through, it gathered the facts, added the repository, installed Nginx, configured the firewall, started Nginx, and so we should be able to now spin up a test page and see the Nginx test page. So let's go ahead and do that. The application window, you can share that. And there it is. We have just the standard Nginx from Centos 7. So we'll be able to configure this later on, as it says here. Right now, I haven't put together a script to do a configuration. I'm just doing the standard template that they have that ships with the server configuration. So, okay. Now we'll go back and we'll look at the all right, so now we're back here. We've done the Nginx install. And the next thing we need to do is install Java. So let's look at that specific. So we'll see what we have here. We have a Java 8 install YAML. That's this script right here. And we can just cat that to get an idea. It's fairly, as you can see, it's just hosts all again, the IP for the local on the local LAN. Well, user is root, and we're installing Java 1.8 OpenJDK, and it's fairly simple, just using the Yum package manager. It says what we want to install and the state which is present, and then the Ansible goes through and installs that for us. We got Ansible playbook, and then we'll go Java 8 install.yaml. How that goes. One of the things that was a little frustrating working with this, especially with Centos 7, is that the Oracle download is a little more convoluted than this OpenJDK is. So again, it's not quite as straightforward as with Ubuntu server, but it was again good to learn a different way of and a different Java JDK of putting it together. So the Java is really needed to support Elasticsearch, and the Elasticsearch, of course, is a component of the Elk stack. And that's why we need to do this. And later on, after I've gone through and put this all together, I'll make these into a roll and then collapse it all into one script. But right now I'm just doing it a little bit at a time. So let's see. Yeah, we can see that we're installing. Goes along. So let's take a look at the installation here in the. Well, I've already catted it out and looked at it. It's the same thing. It's fairly small, so it's not much there to look at. It just takes time for it to install and get done. So why do all this? Well, the scripts are very important to have repeatable and testable environments. And I've been working quite a bit with Ubuntu server. I decided to move over to Centos, work with it, and look a little bit more at SE Linux and how that impacts the scripts. It also looks like SUSE also has a nice type of enterprise software system. So it might be good to go ahead and really be able to have scripts and work with all three of those. Select the one that's the most appropriate for any given situation that you're trying to integrate with. To see how that goes. So in any case, cruising along here, waiting while the Open JDK installs. Need that again to support Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is kind of interesting. Been working with it and getting our documents into the Elasticsearch JSON format. And that's the format that you put the data documents in is it really determines what you can get out of the system. And I think there's some issues to be addressed there. I think later on I might put together a video on that and some of the decisions and the interesting things about how Elasticsearch can be used for full text search. We have a fairly large body of work, about a little bit over 100 research documents and maybe a similar amount, 100, 120 types of presentations and so forth that we want to put into Elasticsearch. But here we say, okay, that now we can see that the Java, we installed Java and it's there. So let's go ahead and just make sure that it's installed. So we'll bring up another shell over here, SSHin. See how this goes. There you go. So we had passwordless SSH keys. And then we'll just try Java. Okay, Java's installed. That's good. Get out of there. All right. And now for the next one, we're going to create a user. And this is a really interesting, let's create user YAML right here. You can see, we'll bring that up while it's installing. We'll talk about it a little bit. So it's Ansible ANSI BLE playbook. User, there we go. All right, so that should work. Okay, now we have a prompt that says enter the name of a new user. So, okay, we'll do that. And the password. Comment. This is usually where you put the full username. All right. So it's going through, checking things out, modifying the wheel group, installing the sudo package, and we'll go ahead and pull this one up over here, and we'll stop presenting that. We'll look at the code while we're all right. So what we're doing here is this is the script create user, and so the vars prompt. So what we first do is we prompt for the variables, username, user password, and comment. And then once that's done, we start with our task. So we check to make sure we have a wheel group, check the group, make sure it's present, install the sudo package. We'll create the non-root user, and these are the variables from the prompts that we brought. We add that user to the wheel group. And then we add a local public key for key-based SSH authentication. Authorized key, we get the user's name and the item comes from this SSH ID file that's on the command machine. And then restrict the root SSH login. So what we do here now is we go into the etc SSH config file and change the permit root login to no. So then SSH will not allow root login using SSH now. And then we go through and we restrict the SSH logins to keys only. Again, in the SSH config, we said permit password authentication, and we set password authentication to no. So we don't allow root to log in at all. And then by SSH, root can only log in from the console. And then restrict the SSH logins to keys only. We do that here. And so no passwords can be used. Then we restart the system and we're basically done with that. So let's go now, stop this and go back and look at the script to see how it's going. All right, so here we are. We've got gathered the facts, checked the wheel group, installed a sudo package. We created the non-root user. We did the public key. Did the strict SSH login to root. We restrict SSH logins to keys only. We eliminate passwords, and we restart it. Okay, so let's go ahead here and see and check our new user. See if we can log in using our keys. That works. There we are, logged in, localhost to the server. All right, so let's just summarize and recap here. We installed Nginx, and then we installed Java to support Elasticsearch. Then we installed a new user and eliminated the ability to log in, for root to log in at all, and then for anyone else to log in with passwords, had to use keys. So how far we've gone with this particular set, and I'm going to now start, we'll just exit out of here, and then look over here. So we have, what's this? This is our playbook for install YAML, right? There we go. And this was our file there. And I'll create a GitHub page for this in next week or so, once I have a little more experience with it, make sure it works okay all the way through. So pretty much it for this round. I'm going to stop the broadcast, and I'll have more information and more material out there for next week. Take care and have fun.